No days off for the Hardwood Show. It is a Monday 11-game NBA slate with Run Pure Sports. I'm JT Hayes. If you're new to our content, then I have a couple of pieces of advice for you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And if you're not already a member, another big day in NFL for a lot of people. Travis Mangone is usually here, sweet Travis, and he's been being fitted for his crown. The Showdown King took down yet another Showdown contest yesterday afternoon, the Bills and the Cowboys. Congrats to him. But go ahead, use code Giblets54, or as my friends in Peru say, Heblets44. Get 44% off of your first month, your first week. It includes SaberSim, which is what Rubio and AP and Travis have been talking about, doing shows about several days each week for NFL content, talking about the Showdown content. So go ahead, get on over, join that. Carson Lambrecht became a member less than a week ago. He's already addicted. Carson, this is one of those addictions that's okay to have. It's like going to church. People won't find you insane. All right, I take that back. But people won't think that like you're, a thug or a criminal if you go to church all the time. AP, it's Monday. I feel like, well, we did just see each other yesterday. But how was your Sunday NFL day? Mine was okay. I refused to play DeMarcus Robinson as I thought he was the worst play on the slate. And in 2 snaps, he just absolutely destroyed. But it was okay for me. How was it for you? How's your week off to hopefully a good start?
Yeah, no, Sunday was good. I ate a bunch of chalk, but I had some dusty plays from the Jets, and it just those sank a bunch of my lineups, and it is what it is. We move on. NFL main slate continues to feel like you have to like get it 100% like perfect. It's just insane each and every week. And hey, speaking of church, what is funny or kind of funny, but my wife and family go every Sunday, and I'm working, so I can't go. But
Jesus.
Good guy. I'm there. I'm there in my head, even though I'm really just trying to cook up lineups and figure out how to get some bets in most Sunday mornings. So there you go.
The point is you make it when you can. And if all that we're told about Jesus or God or even Allah is true, then they're benevolent. They understand you're doing what you can and they forgive you. And notice I made no reference to the fact that you wanted to play Jets yesterday. So I get a little bit of a break from any type of attack.
My bad. Hey, my apologies. My bad. And real quick, Raul, the reason it's injury or news that tag, and this would be a news related issue that I'm waiting for, and that news is Killian Hayes is questionable. The Pistons have to shake something up, and they should be giving Marcus Sasser more minutes. So that again, if Hayes is out, I think we're going to talk about it. This slate, there's like no value. DK pricing. The one thing that's really kind of weird is, when you go and look at it, the pricing makes it very difficult to get the studs. To get the studs on this slate, you really have to play some very fringe value type of plays. So it's going to be an interesting slate to break down.
Before we get on to DC, because I'm interested in talking to him as well, but AP, I almost tweeted at you yesterday, going back to our discussion on Friday's show, because, of course, Monty Williams is coaching a team on this slate. If it was too soon to pull the plug and decided that Arthur Smith is a terrible head coach. But I know the answer. Anyone in Atlanta knows the answer after seeing Bijan Robinson touch the ball 7 times in that worst loss of any franchise yesterday. The Jets suck. We know they're going to suck. We know that they're going to have games like that. The Falcons could have been DC in a 3-way tie for first in the NFC South. Instead, they're not even close enough to get a good draft pick. So let's say goodbye to Arthur. But anyway, DC will say hello to you. How was your Sunday? You look bright and fresh, like you did a hike with Lola today. How are you doing? How's your week going so far? About 16 hours into it.
Yeah, I'm not. Speaking of church, I'm not a big churchgoer myself either. But after 3 days in Sin City, maybe I need to hit the church and repent and find some salvation. Fun weekend in Vegas for me. I have slightly more money than I had when I departed to Vegas. So you know what? We're going to count that as a win, right? Like not a ton more, but a little bit more. So that's good. A lot of sports watching, a lot of gambling. I love gambling while I'm gambling, right? That's you're having a good weekend. So really good time. Very tired, but you know what? We're going to pick some winners today, NBA, NFL, and then we'll sleep for 13 hours tonight. And hopefully wake up to some winners. So good stuff. Excited for the show. Wish it wasn't an 11-game slate today. It would have been nice to come back to a little 5-6 gamer, but hey, can't make the schedule. We got to do our best with the slate we're given. Let's get to it.
We live within what the NBA gods have provided us. And DC, as you mentioned tonight, an 11-game slate. AP, as you mentioned, pricing, at least on DraftKings, is a little bit tight. We have spots that we have loved to attack that are either we're going to find the pricing is really tight, really high on some of those players that we would want in those spots, or spots that we've been attacking for the last couple of weeks, weak defenses like the Atlanta Hawks. Well, they get the Detroit Pistons tonight. There's some news there, but still, it's just been a massive rotation in what has been a very odd and really terrible start to Monty Williams' tenure in Detroit. But we'll get into the slate, beginning with a game that when I first looked at it, I thought, all right, I'm going to be interested in some pieces. Then I see the prices. There is some news here. However, I don't know if the news is going to be all that exciting to us, depending on how it breaks. Anyway, the Los Angeles Clippers heading into Indianapolis to take on the Pacers. Clippers favored by only 4 here, AP, 247.5 total. Tyrese Halliburton is questionable. Andrew Nembhard and Jalen Smith remain out. Miles Turner is also questionable in this one for the Clippers, fully healthy with the exception of Moussa Diabate, and it remains out, and Bones Highland is questionable. What are your thoughts here? 247.5 total. You've been on the Pacers total. Is the Clippers a team that really would like to have as few possessions as possible per game, though? What are your thoughts here? Depending on the news, if Tyrese and Turner, I think a midday downgrade play, what are your thoughts if at least Turner misses as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to grade out as one of the better games to target early, at least on the Clippers side. James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Also, Paul George, a little hashtag revenge narrative if you're into something like that. But this is kind of what I'm talking about on this slate, trying to get up to the Lukas, the, Jokic, Joel Embiid, who's questionable. Very, very difficult because we just, it's just a lot of pricing stuff. Like these traditional value plays that are typically priced in that 4K range are, like 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. And that's relatively expensive for a guy like that. Or like D'Anthony Melton, Bruce Brown. They're all like Bruce Brown, 6'2", Tari Eason, who, was like a 4K guy. It's now 6K. So it's Dean Wade, 4'8". These aren't like cheap price tags for guys that used to be kind of cheap. So keep that in mind while you're making builds. And then that also enhances the value in these players like the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard has been incredible, 8'6", arguably too cheap. Like if pricing was all the same across the board, like each player was kind of priced in line with each other, Kawhi Leonard, if you're looking at like the Tari Eason pricing, Kawhi Leonard should probably be like 9.5. Paul George should be like 8.7, 8.8. James Harden should be like 9.3. And so this is an area of value that I find on the slate, and it's enhanced also by the pace at which the Pacers play at too. So I think Zubac, Leonard, PG, James Harden, all very much in play. And I'm debating, do I make a rule like 2 of the 3, big 3 here? Like, do I limit it to 2 of James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard? That is a rule I'm strongly considering, just because I don't know if you're going to hit that ceiling that you need in optimal lineups between all 3 of them. Great pace spot. I'm siding with Paul George, though, in the little revenge narrative. He's been incredible. But I'm also going to have some Kawhi Leonard in there too. And I'm going to mix and match him with James Harden. I think James Harden has looked really good. I've been kind of on the Clippers lately on the bet side. They're starting to find something. And this is a team that a lot of people, it seems like they kind of quit on, but man, you're seeing the upside that they have right now, and they've looked really good. So I like their side tonight against a Pacers team. I kind of thought that we'd see a hangover for a few teams, the Pacers being one of them, Lakers, Bucks, just from like the in-season tournament. And we're kind of seeing that with the Pacers right now. They really need Halliburton to play tonight, or I think this game could definitely get out of control.
Definitely a spot maybe to look at a bet on the Clippers there, favored only by 4 points, DC. As AP mentioned, pricing is tight here. Some news to come, but your initial thoughts on the Clippers and the Pacers. Clippers' big three has been playing well, and it looks like Ivica Zubac at 6,200 on DraftKings, which is a little expensive for him, especially with Daniel Tice now back. However, it looks like one of the best priced plays on the slate on paper. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, the Clippers have really turned it around. I think that move of taking Westbrook to the bench really kind of flipped it for them. Obviously, after the Harden trade, we've seen Kawhi, Paul George. It seems like really consistently, right? 45 to seems like 60 fantasy points pretty much every night. Hard to imagine they don't get there in this spot against the Pacers. So, yeah, I've been kind of off the Clippers in general for a lot of the year. That's certainly been a mistake over the last couple weeks. And, you know, it's hard, like AP said, to get in the Lukas, the Jokers of the world. So, you know, Paul George at 8,100, Kawhi Leonard at, I think he's 8,600. These guys are really strong plays for kind of that mid-range build. I'm in on the Clippers, and then obviously a lot depends on the news for the Pacers, but I think potentially some really good value on the Pacers as well. If Halliburton misses, which I think is somewhat likely, I'll be in on the TJ McConnell train here. I know he's 6.3K. I do think some people will be scared of that price tag, but you know, if you run the numbers with Halliburton off the court, McConnell smashes. He's up around 50 fantasy points per 36 minutes, which I think is a fair minutes projection for him if Halliburton misses. And then the Pacers' big man rotation is interesting too. Obviously already missing Jalen Smith, but if Turner sits, Isaiah Jackson, another guy that I think would have really, really big potential if Miles Turner does miss. So, yeah, depending on which way the news breaks for the Pacers, you can have a pretty good potential game stack here with the high pace game, some value pieces, stars on the Clippers, obviously, to play. So, yeah, a lot depends on that Pacers news, but potentially a very, very good game to kick off the slate.
Drew Carpenter says, please give us the Isaiah Jackson value. Look, he's been playing 20 minutes, all of a sudden back in the rotation with Jalen Smith injured, and he's been playing really well. He's been a monster fantasy producer per minute. If he starts, even at that 5K price, I would say I would definitely be in on that. But we'll have to wait for the news. Next one we go to, not as an exciting game here. Houston at Cleveland. Cleveland favored by 4, 215.5 DC. AP referenced the price on Dean Wade. Well, Donovan Mitchell is priced up. LeVert, who had a total dud the other night, priced up here. Jared Allen at 7,400 against the Rockets, who are all of a sudden under Ime Udoka, a very, very solid defensive team and a much, much slower pace team. The news here, Ty Jerome out for Cleveland. Tari Eason is probable for the Rockets. Amen Thompson remains out. Are there any plays in this game, DC, that you can find yourself getting to on the 11-gamer?
Yeah, I don't love this game. I mean, the Rockets, crazy turnaround for them, right? Like for years, they were a team that you just targeted, turned the ball over constantly, played fast, played no defense. And it's all flipped. I mean, this team is one of the best defensive teams in the league now. I certainly didn't see that coming headed into the year. They play slow, play with pride. It's a defensive-minded team, and it's one that you don't really want to target very often with many pieces. Obviously, with Darius Garland out, the role for Donovan Mitchell right now is pretty insane. But 9,900 in a brutal matchup, in a slow game, I'll probably pass, to be honest. If I'm paying up that much, I'm going to try to get to one of the true studs on the slate. So probably a no for Mitchell. And then, Max Strus, Karis LeVert. I think there's going to be times to play these guys, but I'm just not sure tonight is that night. A little bit of interest in Jared Allen, but you don't want to go crazy with Cleveland here in this bad of a matchup on an 11-game slate with news to come throughout the evening. So mostly passing on Cleveland and Kind of the same for Houston. I really don't see too much that I love unless you guys got some plays that I'm missing, but mostly out in this game in general.
I'm with you, DC. AP, anything that you see here that interests you, Houston and Cleveland?
Yeah, so Houston is on the back end of a back-to-back. I agree with kind of the analysis there. From a big picture point of view, I will make the case for one Donovan Mitchell, and one of the reasons is look, like Evan Mobley out for a while, Darius Garland out for a while. When you just look at the minutes, the usage, and the upside that Mitchell has, you could put him in that stud type of category where maybe he deserves to be priced a little bit higher. 9.9 is a big price tag. I understand that, but Dame Lillard, and this was wild things happen on Sundays. It's just like, it's a very difficult day to bet because you see the most wild outcomes in the NBA. Who knows if it's because like players are going out the night before? These are young dudes. Like who knows what's going on? But you see it like Dame Lillard. Oh, we lost JTAs. Let me change this up real quick so that we're not. So yeah, like Dame Lillard absolutely cooked this team. So I will say I do have some interest in Donovan Mitchell, just because of the situation at hand where we just no Darius Garland, massive bump there to Donnie Mitch. That would be the one guy that I would be looking at. I like Dean Wade. Dean Wade came out and hit a bunch of threes early, and look, man, I know value's lacking on the slate, but 4.8 for Dean Wade is very expensive. And then Şengün, I just like Jared Allen. It's a good spot for him without Mobley, but now he's priced appropriately. Yeah. So I'm not as high on Jared Allen. And Karis LeVert was mega chalk. I think this was Saturday when we had the NFL games, big NBA slate. Karis LeVert, definitely mega chalk. Now, no one's going to play him. No one's going to play him at all. Came off the bench. His usage was insane. I'm keeping him in my player pool because, 31% usage rate off the bench. There could be some – it's just one of those slates where the mid-tier build is going to look really attractive, and it wouldn't surprise me to see kind of a random guy like Karis LeVert who has an extended role right now get it done off the bench. So I agree with you guys. Not the best game on the surface, but I do think there's a few plays that are viable in this one.
All right, I got to get my Thunder Bridge fixed. I got the modem fixed, but we'll work on the Thunder Bridge next. Thunderbolt is what they call it, actually. So, but we'll move on to the next one. LeVert's price. Now, LeVert still played somewhere in the 20-minute range. He wasn't terrible. He didn't absolutely kill you, but the price getting up there now for a guy that is going to come off the bench here against the Rockets. The next game, AP, Chicago Bulls in Philadelphia. Philadelphia favored by 10, 226.5 total. Joel Embiid is questionable. A midday downgrade, but he was at shoot-around. Marcus Morris also questionable. He's been getting minutes here for the Sixers lately. On the Bulls side, of course, we know that Zach LaVine is going to be out for some time. Alex Caruso, questionable. Seems like he's questionable. Then he plays, then he leaves the game early. This has been something that's been happening for the last couple of weeks. And Torrey Craig is doubtful. Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic have been really, really good over the last couple of weeks since the Zach LaVine injury. But again, another situation where the prices are elevated. AP, what are your thoughts, Chicago at Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, this Philly team, they're just blowing out teams left and right. I mean, if you look at defensively, we have they haven't been as good against opposing guards, but that's kind of masked because they continue to blow teams out. And so you're not getting that full run from opposing teams. And look, that's going to happen when your last few opponents are the Hornets, the Pistons twice, and the Wizards. The Wizards twice also. Mixed in there is a game against the Hawks. So, maybe it's one of those spots where it's just the Bulls catch them off guard. I will say, DC and I have been the biggest Chicago Bulls stands of recent, and mainly Kobe White. He's been absolutely cooking, but now he's almost 8K. He's 7.8. And again, that goes back to when I did the prep for like the heat map on the slate, I'm like, this pricing's like wild. Like on DraftKings, it reminds me of like an old school FanDuel slate a little bit, where the pricing is just very, very difficult. So Kobe White, I'm keeping him in my player pool because despite like crushing night in and night out, he's never owned. He's like never owned at all. The matchup's brutal for Vucevic. I can't go there. If Embiid was out, I would have more interest in Vucevic because I think the game would stay closer as well. Actually, if Embiid was out, this game would become really, really interesting. So keep an eye on that news. DeRozan 8-1. Again, I prefer Paul George at that same price tag. But again, DeRozan 8-1, I think it's a fair price. The Philly side, they're healthy. They're blowing teams out. Like blowout risk. I'm not interested in the Philly side at all right now. Like it looks like DeAnthony Melton could get some ownership. This goes back to just like pricing being really strange. And so my advice is like a play like a fringe play like DeAnthony Melton. I'd much rather play like a Karis LeVert who has more minutes risks, but his upside just with the usage and the natural scoring there that he has is much greater. So overall, right now I'm under on this game and feel pretty good about that.
All right, DC Bulls at Sixers. Anything that you see here that sticks out?
Yeah, to me, a lot depends on the Embiid news, which obviously would change things in a big way for Philadelphia. But if he does miss, I think the Bulls guys will go under-owned again, right? I don't think people will adjust properly to Embiid being out. What is it like? They've blown out their opponent in like 6 of the last 8 games, including I think the last 4. What Embiid's doing right now is nuts, right? It's like 30 minutes a game, and he's still putting up 70 every night. So, yeah, I mean, if you can afford Embiid, if he's in there, I think he's a fine play. Obviously, if he's out, most of Philadelphia, I think, becomes in play at that point, even if the matchup's not great against the Bulls. And, yeah, I mean, the Kobe White train has been a fun one. He's like 3-4% owned every night, goes off. He's gone off pretty much every single game since Levine has been out. I'll admit I don't love it as much tonight at this price tag in a kind of a tough matchup, but he's just been so good that I think you've got to keep him at least in play. I think DeRozan, another good play. He'll be, I think, way, way less owned than Paul George is at the same position. So that's a decent pivot, especially if Embiid sits. And then Vucevic, it's a scary matchup for sure against Embiid, but man, he's been really good too. His role has changed, and these guys are just playing so many minutes right now. As the Bulls have kind of turned their season around a little bit. So I don't mind Vooch. One issue against going up against Embiid is foul trouble. He usually does a pretty good job of staying out of that, better than most centers. So I do think he's in play more than other centers are against Embiid. But yeah, we'll see on the Embiid news. I do expect him to be in there. I think the line indicates that he probably will be. But if he's out, yeah, I think the Bulls players become much more interesting. Obviously, the obvious plays would be the Philly guys, but I like the Bulls guys too if Embiid does end up sitting out.
A news-dependent interest there at Philadelphia. Next game, Minnesota at Miami. Miami is going to start to get healthy here. Kyle Lowry will miss. However, Bam Adebayo is back. Tyler Hero is back as well. Jamal Cain and Josh Richardson also in. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, your Minnesota Timberwolves, DC, Anthony Edwards, interesting weekend for Anthony Edwards. He's questionable. Jaden McDaniels and Josh Minot, also questionable. 217.5 total. Timberwolves favored by 2. Anything you like here in this game?
Not really. Depending on, obviously, how the news breaks down, I think Edwards is a fine play at 8,800. The price is reasonable, especially in comparison to kind of the rest of the slate, but really low total, like you said, at 217. 2 good, really good defensive teams, especially for Miami getting Bam Adebayo back. I think this game's going to play slow. It's going to play defensively. And it's just hard to see, Miami getting healthier too, obviously getting Tyler Hero back, even though they lost Kyle Lowry. That doesn't really help anyone in particular with Lowry out. He's a low usage player. Anyway, it is the Jimmy Butler Butler and the Wolves hate each other, Towns and Butler in particular. So I do think Butler is a little bit interesting to me just because part of the reason we don't love playing him. It's just, it seems like he kind of is on cruise control in the beginning of seasons a little bit. That's been the case somewhat this year too. This game is one where I don't think he will be. I think this game is going to stay close. I think you'll see bigger minutes, higher usage from Butler than we typically see. But the matchup is still pretty tough against the Wolves with Tyler Hero back. So I don't think I'll end up there, but he would be the most interesting play on Miami for me. And then assuming Edwards goes, which I think he will, the Wolves look pretty uninspiring. Just seem overpriced if Edwards is in there. So we'll see on the news, but overall, obviously not one of the better games on the slate.
AP, Jimmy Butler only 8,700 on DraftKings, but a fully healthy Miami team now, 217 total. Any thoughts here? Miami hosting Minnesota.
Yeah, I agree with what DC said. I think it's going to be a good game. Bam being back is just Bam and Hero being back is just massive. But are they going to get a full complement of minutes right out of the gate? You typically don't see that. So paying, but their price tags are both like way elevated. So it becomes difficult. I mean, Jimmy Butler maybe, but again, you got to look at the rest of the slate. Are you playing Jimmy Butler over Leonard, over Paul George? I don't think I am. He's shown at this point in the season like he's fine deferring, like letting his guys, players cook. So I don't have a ton of interest in Jimmy, and he isn't like, while we want to think he's like a revengeful guy, it's not like he just played the Bulls in back-to-back games and failed to hit. And he did this without Tyler Hero, without Bam Adebayo, and he failed to hit even 40 DK points. So now in a tough matchup against the Timberwolves, no, I can't get there. And the other thing too, like we've been targeting Miami with opposing teams, but a lot of that is due to them not having Bam, which has made them a team that you can definitely target. Bam being back just changes things defensively for them. So it's definitely not as good of a situation as it once was. So if Edwards is in, I think this is a spot where you full fade. If he's out, you could make the case for a Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, he was incredible. I played him against Indy, and he was like unowned. It was insane, and he puts up a 40 piece. I played a bunch of Naz Reid on that slate as well. So yeah, if Ant's out, I could go back to Karl Anthony Towns. I will say, like, with how big the Timberwolves are, it's going to make things pretty awkward or pretty difficult for Miami, but they have Bam back, and that's going to be huge for them. So on the surface, under on this game could change if we get some injury news.
All right. Hit the like button. We are going to come up with a number here. In two more games, we'll come up with a number about what we need to have the plays of the day. In the meantime, we will keep rolling on to the next game, AP. It is Charlotte at Toronto. Toronto favored by 12.5 at 223 total. And Miles Bridges couldn't get into Canada, so he is going to miss this game. Just ruled out officially. LaMelo Ball remains out, as does Frank Ntilikina. Gordon Hayward is questionable, as is PJ Washington. Mark Williams is doubtful. And Terry Rozier is probable here. No major injury news for Toronto. And Toronto, another team that, hey, we like to play some guys against Charlotte on occasion, but the pricing is just through the roof. Thoughts here, Charlotte and Toronto?
Yeah, I don't like projecting blowouts, but if Gordon Hayward and PJ Washington, if they miss, and then no Mark Williams too, I mean, like Charlotte, they don't have dudes. Terry Rozier has been like a bright spot of late, but OG Anunoby, a very good on-ball defender. He's going to make life very difficult on Rozier, and Schroeder has been decent as well. So there's a lot of things that Toronto can do defensively to make it very difficult on this team. So again, we need to wait for the news, but no Bridges. You got to think that Bryce McGowan starts again. And like, this is what, again, going back to what I was talking about, like on this slate, Bryce McGowan's in this spot. Like, okay, so look at the price differences with him on FanDuel, 3.8K versus DraftKings, 5.1. Mm-hmm. Normally, this would be like a value that we could go to and play and feel pretty good about. But at 5.1, even if he starts and gets like 28 to 30 minutes, he could absolutely bust at that price tag. So there is still risk around those type of plays. And that's what you have to be careful about on the slate. So again, wait for the news. I mean, Brandon Miller, I would love to play him. He didn't get the blowout run, obviously, against Philly. They smashed him. He played 29 minutes, was 4 of 16, but still put up 26 DK points. His usage was insane. If no Bridges, if Gordon sits, if Washington sits, PJ Washington sits, if you think the game stays close, you better be playing some Terry Rozier and Brandon Miller, because that's where the points are going to come from. I don't trust it at all. And then on the other side too, can you really pay a premium price tag for a guy like Scotty Barnes, 9-4, if he's not going to see the fourth quarter? So again, that's like my biggest concern there. And there are some Raptor pieces that are, popping here. So I'd be very cautious with that. What you could do is take a risk, take a flyer on like a Malachi Flynn. He's going to get time like 16 to 19 minutes with that second unit anyway. Maybe if they're getting it done and playing well, maybe he gets up to 20 minutes, 21, and at 3.7 with no value on the slate, it could work. But there's also some other value that could open up at the center spot as well that we're going to talk about. So again, don't like this game, but there could be some pieces that you could work in.
DC, Charlotte, and Toronto, except Miles Bridges has been deported back to the U.S. What are your thoughts here on this one?
How does that work? They show up at the airport and they're just like, no, you can't come in again.
All right. So what about this? What if they fly in there and because if you're on the plane, you're still like on U.S. soil. Isn't that how it works? JT, maybe he's just locked in the plane. Who knows?
So the way it works is he wasn't cleared to enter. He wasn't granted a visa. So he never got on a plane. So it's a lot less awkward when you show up at the airport and they say, no, sorry, you got to get back on a different plane. So that's what happened here.
Yeah. I mean, Charlotte, potentially they're going to have like a really, really bad roster for this game, right? With Bridges already missing, Rozier questionable, Hayward questionable, PJ Washington questionable, Mark Williams doubtful. I'm kind of with AP where 11-game slate, I might just be hoping this game. I mean, it's not a great matchup for Charlotte anyway. They could be a pretty tough team tonight to kind of project. I could see minutes kind of going all over the place for the remaining guys they have left. And I mean, even if Rozier's in there, right? Do you really want to play 8,700 Rozier against OG Anunoby when he's got no surrounding talent around him? I'm not sure that I do. So they seem a little overpriced. I mean, if they're all out, it's going to be hard, I think, not to play some Charlotte guys, depending on what they run out there for the starting lineup. But I don't trust this team with all these guys out. Tough matchup in Toronto. Kind of a situation I'm hoping to mostly avoid. So I'm kind of hoping some of the Charlotte guys end up playing, so I kind of don't have to go there at all. And then Toronto, I don't see playing these guys. I don't mind the Flynn call. It's, in previous years of NBA DFS, you wouldn't have considered a guy like Malachi Flynn, but there's just not very many reasonable sub 4K plays. It's just the way pricing is right now. So I think that's okay if you really need the value. But overall, this game will be hopefully one that I don't end up with much exposure to it.
All right, Alex is here. Alex, I hope you hit the like button on the way in. I'm not sure what it means when you say that you're a Clifford stan, or are you calling me a Steve Clifford stan? That is definitely not the case. Mike Gray makes a good point here. Could be a game where the Raptors are up huge and Chris Boucher destroys. That is something that you could consider in MME, no question about that. And then we did get some news. Tyrese Halliburton is going to play. Miles Turner will not. Marcus Morris has also been ruled out for the 76ers. No news on the other Charlotte guys and no news on Embiid. Makes me think that they probably are going to be suiting up this evening. But we will wait to hear definitively before we make our decisions. We move on to the next game here, DC. And again, talked about this a little bit earlier. The Pistons into Atlanta. Atlanta favored by 12, 247 total. Lots of news here on the Atlanta side. Bogdan Bogdanovic and Clint Capella are questionable, as is DeAndre Hunter. AJ Griffin and Mohamed Way are going to miss once again. And then for Atlanta, Seth Lundy and Miles Norris are active, at least. So a little bit of worry there that some of these other pieces may miss, which could be interesting because then we'd have a little bit more of a condensed rotation against this Pistons team. On the Detroit side, Alec Burks is in. Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart are out. And Killian Hayes, as we talked about earlier, is questionable. Question on the Detroit side, DC, who do we go with? I mean, it could be Marcus Sasser, but Burks is in. And he's been playing everybody on that bench every single game. What do you see here, Detroit and the Hawks?
What's Detroit up to? Like 23 straight losses or something crazy?
Something like that. So a number, they're approaching a number at which point it becomes untenable to keep anyone who's involved with the management of the program.
Yeah, it's been rough for Detroit. Probably another loss coming up. What are they, 12-point dogs in this one? I mean, yeah, Detroit's just bad kind of in every way. So obviously teams going up against them are teams to target. They don't have any rim protection. They just have almost nothing. Cade hasn't played well. I'm mostly off Detroit here. I mean, the matchup's obviously good on both sides for Detroit and Atlanta. So it's obviously not a game you can completely write off, but it's hard to trust Detroit now. You do have the battle of the Bogdanoviches in this game. I think both those guys are reasonable plays. And then a lot depends on the Capella news, right? I think if Capella sits, Okongwu he's expensive too at 6,300, but he's been playing some pretty big minutes recently, and the matchup doesn't get much better than going up against the interior of the Pistons. So would love Okongwu in that scenario. I think Trae Young's fine at 10K. I bet he goes under the radar today, but matchup's pretty good for him as well. But really, it's Okongwu, the one that I'm monitoring most closely as a play. Would want, obviously, Capella to be out. I think he would be one of the better center plays on the slate if that does come to pass. And, yeah, Detroit, you're just better off avoiding this team most nights, which is what I'll be doing here.
AP, you talked a little bit about the Pistons. They get to face the Hawks. Capella missed the other night. Onyeka Okongwu was highly owned and didn't really deliver, but this is a different game and a much, much better matchup. What are your thoughts here, the Pistons and the Hawks?
Yeah, so like opposing bigs have been crushing DFS wise. You know, we're talking fantasy here, and so our friend Marvin Bagley or James Wiseman, who's going to be one of them is going to get the start, and you know, like at least DFS wise, James Wiseman last two games 40, 34 DK points. At least he's producing, getting rebounds, but again, very difficult play. I would rather, assuming Bagley gets the start, 4.9 is a very fair price tag. But now with Miles Turner out, Isaiah Jackson should get the start. And this is, again, prioritizing news on a slate like this one is really important. I also think in that Indy game, which, I mean, we could always come back to it, but Walker, their power forward, who's 3'6", I think he's going to be in play as well. They need some bigs, and they have no bigs, so that'll be an interesting one. And that's the same case for the Pistons. So Marvin Bagley, assuming he starts, would be my preferred 4.9 on a slate. A slate with no value. I think there's worse plays. Bojan, again, he's going to absolutely nuke one of these games. And for this game to stay close or within striking distance, it's Bojan and Cade. Cade's been horrendous. He's been terrible. But A2, it's a fair price tag, and he's going to get right eventually. And it's DFS is a lot of, like, it's a timing game too. I mean, if you were just absolutely clicking like the Jordan Poole button over and over and over, and he finally got there. He finally absolutely nuked, and it was against the Pacers. So there you go. But yeah, this, the Hawks obviously really great matchup. They play up in pace. They don't play a lot of transition defense. So you can make the case for some Pistons here. Oscar Thompson, a fine play. Bojan, Bagley at center, definitely a fine play. And then if Killian Hayes if he misses this game too, you could, maybe make a case for Jaden Ivey or Marcus Sasser. But again, value's starting to open up, so I don't know if we have to dive down that deep anymore.
I do think, would you agree, AP? You want to be a little bit careful with how many Pistons you put in your lineup.
Yeah, 100%.
Of this rotation, even with guys out. I mean, Oscar Thompson gets pushed back into the starting lineup, has a good game, and then he's a little bit off shooting, and boom, immediately gets pulled, and now it's 23 minutes, 24 minutes. Very, very unpredictable there. A spot where...
Yeah, like really good point. Really good point. Bojan is like my preferred guy, and they don't like he's been like raw scoring dependent recently, but they're going to need him to get some rebounds too in this matchup. So, but that's a really good point. I would not play more than like 2 Pistons max. Like I think I'm on board with you there.
Max 4,900 tag on DraftKings on Bagley is enticing. I can't tell if it's a trap or it's just enticing because there's no value. And if he ends up at, say, 25-30%, then I think it's something where maybe we should look elsewhere. We will move on to the next game. We got about 56 likes here and 223 watching. AP, I think we got to get to like 110. I mean, you guys agree with the 110 number? You think we should go higher or go lower in order to get the plays of the day?
Yeah, what do you think, DC? We got what, like 125?
We'll do 125. Let's bump it up a little bit.
All right, 125 for the plays of the day, or we will put them in Discord. There's no problem with putting them in Discord. We have been known to do that. We don't like to do that, but it's something that's been known to happen. Remember, once again, the code for 25% off is Giblets44 as well. Next game here, AP, Memphis heading into Oklahoma City. Pretty much 2 fully healthy teams with a couple of exceptions, and they are all on the Memphis side. Bismack Biyombo is doubtful. Luke Kennard and Marcus Smart remain out, and Ja Morant has 1 game left on his season-beginning suspension. The total here is 229.5. Oklahoma City favored by 10.5.
Yeah, so and then Derrick Rose out as well, so Gilliard should get the start. I think I'm trying to remember like last time this happened and they benched him immediately. So like again, it's a 3.8K who's going to start. He's going to be mega chalk. Keep in mind,
he's going to come up in your optos and your projections. You have to know that the floor here is 8 minutes.
Yeah, like they literally benched him, and I remember that slate. It was like the most tilting thing ever because they didn't really have a ball like a dude that could handle the rock, but you could see like Conchar come in and play. I mean, there's so many different things that could happen. But Vince Williams is going to grade out as a really strong play. Santi Aldama is going to be a fine play. Xavier Tillman. We need the starting lineup, though, too. They switched it up quite a bit. Desmond Bane, 8-9. I think he is in play. Jaren Jackson, if you can trust the situation, maybe in play. This also comes down to, can the Grizzlies like keep this game close? And I don't, man, I mean, OKC at home has been very good. They're healthy. Shea has been awesome. I would not be surprised too if we saw a mix up in the starting lineup for OKC too. So keep an eye on that. Isaiah Joe has been awesome. He's been like really, really good. Arguably better than like Josh Giddey. So I would not be surprised if OKC made some changes here too. So how am I handling this? I'm waiting for the news in this situation. I'm not like Gilliard. I'm not like prioritizing him just because he's been terrible. If he beats me, he beats me. I know it's potentially a 3.8K starting point guard. I'm just telling you, when he's been out there, he's not been good at all. So is he gonna, get a solid grade? Most likely, but it comes with a lot of risk.
DC, for Memphis, it's gone from promising young team, interesting young coach trying new things to absolutely dreadful in a very, very big hurry. 2 teams here, Oklahoma City and Memphis, with very, very volatile rotations. Even Josh Giddey, who was a major piece of this team last season. Minutes are all over the place, 15 minutes, I believe, last game. Anything you see here that you're interested in on the 11-gamer?
Yeah, I guess you could start with Gilliard, who these are the kind of chalk plays that you try to, or at least I try to avoid, right? Players who have like low points per minute. I mean, we've got a decent sample size of him on the court without Derrick Rose, without Marcus Smart. Obviously, Smart's been out most of the year. It's been ugly for Gilliard. I mean, he's got a 229 minutes of this kind of situation, the sample size. He's at 24 DraftKings points per 36 minutes, which is really pretty bad, right? 0.7 point per minute, something like that. A usage rate of 10, extremely low. I mean, I think it'll be Desmond Bane that runs the show for OKC here. I think he's an interesting pivot away from Gilliard, right? You get some leverage there. If it's Bane that ends up doing the damage, which I think could happen. I don't mind Jaren Jackson Jr. We've seen his big upside recently in a couple of games. Pretty good matchup for him as well. So, yeah, I think there are ways to kind of play that leverage, get away from Gilliard. It's what I'm planning to do. And then the OKC side looks pretty good too. Memphis has been cooked by opposing ball handlers. Obviously, SGA always goes overlooked, but has, I think, pretty tremendous upside in this matchup at 10.5K. He'll be overlooked for the most part. So he's the main guy I'm looking at for OKC. And then if I go to Memphis at all, it'll probably be with the stars in Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think those are the two best plays on Memphis tonight.
All right, we got some news. Joel Embiid is once again a game time decision. Alex Caruso is going to play once again. Torrey Craig has been ruled out. Killian Hayes has been ruled out for the Pistons. And Clint Capella and DeAndre Hunter have been ruled in for the Hawks. So that is the latest news dump here. DC, the next one, studs that we were talking about that are going to be difficult to fit on this slate. At least they were 15 minutes ago. Maybe getting a little bit easier, maybe getting warmer here. Dallas heading into Denver. Denver favored by 8.5, a 237.5 total. Luka Doncic, not at shoot around, but says he's going to play. He is probable. For the Dallas Mavericks, however, a ton of other injuries. Derek Lively is out. Maxi Kleber is out. Josh Green and Kyrie Irving are also out. And Rashawn Holmes is questionable. On the Denver side, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope upgraded to questionable after missing a few games due to that concussion. Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray are probable. What are your thoughts here, Dallas in Denver?
Yeah, assuming Luka does play in this one, I mean, if you can do it, if you can fit in the Luka Joker stack, it's really, really difficult to do. Obviously, would be fun and have, both those guys have, 80-point upside pretty easily in this matchup. So I think that would be a good way to go with all the injuries to Dallas. But it's just so hard to fit these 12K plus players right now. I do lean slightly the Joker side between Luka and Nikola, but it's close between the two. Obviously, both guys are good plays. The bigger question, I think, is what to do with the Dallas big men, I guess. I think you'll see people go to Dwight Powell a little bit. We've seen him in this type of scenario where they're down bigs, obviously with Lively out. Minutes are really volatile and not a great fantasy player either. So maybe something to avoid. Maybe you go to a Markieff Morris who's been up near 20 minutes the last couple games. I think he's interesting with Lively out. And then, Tim Hardaway, big role change for him. He's been really firing from deep. I think he's got a lot of upside with no Kyrie Irving. 6,500, high price tag, but has certainly shown the upside. You can get hot from three, score fantasy points in a hurry. Like him a little bit, probably off the Exum train right now, all the way up to 6,600. He's cooled off a little bit. And I don't see much else on Denver I love. Assuming Jamal Murray plays, probably just Joker or bust for me with the Nuggets tonight.
AP, Dallas and Denver, and DC mentioned it, especially if Holmes is ruled out. I mean, Dwight Powell at 4,200 on DraftKings, the only big on this team. It's a bad matchup, but who knows? Maybe he gets to something north of 25 minutes, which doesn't happen often. But what are your thoughts here elsewise, Denver and Detroit? Excuse me, Denver and Dallas.
They need one of these bigs in there. And, Powell, an okay defender, but, matching up against Jokic, I mean, one, it makes it tough, too, from a fantasy standpoint. Maybe could get that pick and roll game going with Luka, but really Derek Lively has been the guy that's excelled in that role with them. So, a potential value. Same with Rashawn Holmes, who's 3K. But again, like if these bigs are out, like Jokic could absolutely cook. So if we have the value on the slate, I mean, the guy could absolutely nuke in the spot. Same with Luka. I agree with DC big time. On that, it's can you find it and make it work? Luka being 12-1, a little more difficult. I think I would side with the Jokic route to especially just because like the Mavericks has been a really nice spot for opposing bigs. We should touch on the Indy situation because usually it's like they have these other guys like Ben Shepherd got it. Like he actually got in the first half. This was on Saturday, which was insane. Walker as well. These guys are all on G League assignments, so they're not available. So the Indiana Pacers spot is a little bit more interesting. From my count, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 available. No, 10 available players tonight. So, I mean, maybe a tighter rotation, just only having 10 players and one of them being James Johnson that's available. So, I don't know. It's going to be maybe if we have time, we come back to that spot. But the Pacers could be another spot that opens up some value.
What do you think? It's like a Popovich situation where they all play 24 minutes?
I don't know. It's like Rick Carlisle is so unpredictable with things at time. But like my one guy I've kept my eye on closely is Jordan Nwora. He's actually been really good, but he gets no run at all. Like unless it's a blowout, like absolutely no run. But they don't really have anyone else. I mean, this dude, he's literally been like a positive on the plus minus each game that he's played. And now the other thing too is like he's cooking against another team's backup. So you got to put some context to it. But I wouldn't mind seeing them giving him a little bit more run.
The third unit, if you will, I believe is when you trademarked the third unit was for Jordan Nwora. All right, we have 3 more games. 3 more games to get to 125 likes. That's the number we're going to get the plays of the day. You're going to want them. It's a tricky slate. Pricing is tight. Some of the injury news isn't all that impactful, despite the fact that some of these plays are going to end up pretty highly owned. So I think it's a day to hit that like button and get the number up there. One of those 3 games. This game I think is interesting, AP. Brooklyn on their West Coast swing. They head into Utah tonight. They're favored by 3.5. 234.5 total. Dorian Finney-Smith says he is going to play. Ben Simmons, Dennis Smith Jr., and Lonnie Walker will not. Keontae George and Omar Yurtseven are out for Utah. John Collins is questionable, and Lucas Samanik is in. What are your thoughts here, Brooklyn and the Jazz?
My thoughts is we should all be looking at Cameron Johnson. I mean, and it's not just so look, power forwards have been smashing Utah. Keegan Murray coming off a career game. This was on Saturday as well. He had 12-3. He was 12 of 13 from deep, and the game wasn't over yet. I forget what Klay Thompson's record is, but they didn't let him finish the game. It was obviously a blowout, but Keegan Murray with a 70 piece. No Fox was in that game, obviously, but he cooked this team. Julius Randle 61. That was 3 games ago. Kawhi Leonard almost a 60 piece. So Karl Anthony Towns 59. Zaire Williams had a career not a career game, but an incredible game against them as well. Zion Williams, not Zaire, different Z. Little bit different of a build as well. Little bit different of a build. But my point is Cameron Johnson in a great spot tonight, maybe going a little bit overlooked. I have a ton of interest in him. I think he's going to grade out to be a good play. The other is Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas, just a bucket. In these matchups, these easier matchups where teams don't play defense, the dude can put up he can put up buckets with the best of them. So I have a little bit of interest in Cam Thomas in tournaments, but really it's Cameron Johnson for me.
DC, we have some of the fan accounts in Discord tonight. Jordan Poole Rizgod is in here with us saying that he's ready to get lit tonight. Devin Booker's dad is here. What's going on, Mr. Booker? But before we get to that, DC, thoughts on the Nets and the Jazz?
Yeah, I don't see a ton to love for the Jazz side here. I do agree with AP. I think Cam Johnson is an interesting play who I think he'll go overlooked too. I think that price tag, 6,200, will scare some people off him. So I really like that call. And I don't think I'd play them both maybe, but Cam Thomas, I mean, this Jazz team just really, really bad defensively. And I do think Cam Thomas is one of those guys who is somewhat matchup dependent. When he gets a matchup like this, he can get hot. And when he does, he keeps shooting, right? Well, we see his usage kind of spike up when it's going well for him. And those are the kind of guys that I think you do want to invest in GPPs, guys that have legitimate upside, especially in that 7K range. So, yeah, I like the call on Thomas, Cam Johnson. I think those are the main two for Brooklyn. Claxton could potentially have a big game here at 6,600, but center's just so loaded, especially with some of the news, that I don't know if I'll end up getting there. And, yeah, Utah, I think going to be in a void for me tonight.
All right. Utah, definitely a great spot for opposing big men. So that certainly is interesting for Nico Claxton. Next game, DC, it's the one that Jordan Poole is in. Washington at Sacramento. Sacramento favored by 14, a 250 total for Sacramento. De'Aaron Fox is questionable on the Washington Wizards side. Danilo Gallinari has been ruled out for a little bit of rest. Johnny Davis, Landry Shamet, and DeLon Wright also will miss here. Thoughts on Washington and Sacramento?
Yeah, really good game environment, obviously, here with the 250 total. Sacramento being favored by 14 makes me think De'Aaron Fox is probably going to play in this game. Looks like he went through shoot around. He's certainly interesting against Washington, who displays just absolutely no defense whatsoever. So, yeah, Fox for Sacramento is good. I mean, Sabonis, I haven't played a ton of him this year personally, but just a smash spot against such a soft interior defense from Washington. So, yeah, I think that the two stars for Sacramento, assuming Fox is in there, both Fox and Sabonis, I wouldn't play them together. I think it's too hard for them both to get there at those price tags. Probably slightly lean Sabonis between the two, but I think both guys pretty strong plays tonight. And then the Washington side, yeah, I guess I missed the what do you get? One Jordan Poole game for the whole year. I missed out on that one. I'm okay with that. Won't be going to Mr. Poole today. I do think Kyle Kuzma, best play on the Wizards. We've seen his minutes usage today pretty consistent, and obviously this game going to be played at a pace which suits his style. So Kuzma, the guy I'm looking at from the Wizards. Yeah, Tyus Jones, he had 60 fantasy points. I missed that one too yesterday against Phoenix. Pretty crazy. Probably going to end up being a blip on the radar, although he's done it 2 games in a row. So maybe Tyus Jones can keep it up, but probably not paying that price tag to find out, at least for me.
AP, thoughts here, Sacramento against the no defense Wizards.
So I wonder if Kyle Kuzma, so he had that tweet, ask me any type of question. I didn't have a question for him. I had more of a, hey, go and tell your coach, you don't need to play 12 guys every single game. This is the NBA. Maybe he went back and had a conversation with his coach, Wes Unseld Jr., and had that convo, because we have seen a tighter rotation from the Wizards. Does that mean that I'm excited about targeting them? No, but again, Tyus Jones, 38 minutes. He's been incredible the last few games. We're seeing Daniel Gafford, 35. Jordan Poole was in foul. I mean, Denny, Avdia, Poole, Gafford, all in foul trouble. And Kyle Kuzma fouled out in this last game against the Suns. 35, 34, 38 minutes, 32, 31 and a half. Not too bad. And I think it was an 8 or 9 man, basically an 8-man rotation. So we're getting better. And the thing about the Kings, when De'Aaron Fox is playing and is available, the pace is always much better. I mean, look at the total. I think it jumped up to 250 points, which is insane. So I actually like Tyus here, 6'6". I think people are going to hesitate to play this guy, but if we can get if this rotation is true, and I feel confident that it's going to that Wes Unseld Jr. is going to continue running the rotation like this? No, I'm not confident at all. But if he does, some of these guys are going to make for really good plays, because this game's going to be really fast. Blowout is obviously the big risk here. And, obviously they're on a back-to-back too, which, again, enhances that risk a little bit more. But I believe Gallinari, he was ruled out. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Correct.
He's out. Yeah. So I don't. Who else are they going to play? Like Corey Kispert sucks. Koulibaly, you're not paying 5.9 for him. And these guys haven't been playing many minutes all season long. So if somehow the Wizards can keep this close or within striking distance, this game is going to produce some really nice fantasy pieces. Like De'Aaron Fox, he could go off. This is another 3-point shooters against the Wizards. Don't forget about Kevin Huerter. I know, like, he's fallen out of the rotation in favor of Malik Monk. But again, if he gets hot, they're letting him stay in there. And this is a matchup that is going to be very, very ideal for him. No one's going to play him either, but he's one of those plays in a tournament that could get you really different. And in the right matchup, which this is, could produce at his price. So I'm intrigued in this game. I just am not fully confident how I want to target it just yet because there are a lot of risks around it.
AP, tweeting coaches to success is something that you absolutely love to see. Keith, the step is here. He needs one lock tonight. Keith, if you hit the like button and 24 of your buddies do so as well, you will get not just one, but 3 locks tonight because you'll get the plays of the day. Jimmy B is here casting aspersions on Tyus Jones the other night. He's done absolutely nothing except just swish everything through the net. Since you've done that, maybe you, Jimmy B, maybe you are the gold dust inspiration of the day. We've got one more game to get to 125 likes, AP. That game is one that maybe is a little bit interesting here. The Knicks in Los Angeles to take on the Lakers. Lakers favored by 4.5, 235 total. Anthony Davis, LeBron James getting a little attention with the questionable tag. Expect that they'll play. Rui Hachimura and Cam Reddish are in, as is D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt. Christian Wood questionable. Gabe Vincent and Jalen Hood-Schifino remain out. Other than Mitchie Robinson, everyone for the Knicks good to go here. The numbers on this game, I said them. Lakers 4.5, 235. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is going to be a game that I end up kind of underweight on. I know the last time I faded a Knicks game that was on an island, Jalen Brunson absolutely nuked. He wasn't really owned too heavily, but he put up like 50 raw. Was close to a triple-double, 84 piece against the Suns. The Suns have been giving up some big numbers defensively, actually, with their big 3 playing. So kind of interesting there. Julius Randle would be the guy that I'd have some interest in. He's had some big games against his former team, against the Lakers. Maybe a little revengeful there. But outside of that, this is going to be a game that I definitely fall underweight on.
Underweight on Knicks Lakers, DC. What say you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in chat, but the Knicks games have been going pretty crazy in terms of the scoring ever since Mitchell Robinson went out, who makes some sense. He's a really good defender. I mean, look at some of these scores: 122 to 144, 139 to 122. So yeah, really good fantasy games from the Knicks recently. And Randall, I think, makes sense. He's been on a roll. I think, playing in Los Angeles, obviously his former team, probably some extra motivation there. So I do like Randall a little bit. I think Jalen Brunson always goes under the radar. Obviously, he had that huge game a couple of games ago. You can't expect that. But at 8,600, he is another one of those guys who's got a pretty good chance to give you 50-plus fantasy points. So mostly looking at Brunson, Randall. I think quickly at 4,800, pretty reasonable. I know he's been a little cold recently, but that price tag is pretty appealing on this specific slate. And then obviously the Lakers side kind of depends on the news, but I think most likely LeBron, Anthony Davis, both going to be in there. You can play one or the other. I think I prefer Anthony Davis in this matchup with no Mitchell Robinson for the Knicks. But I think either guy is a perfectly reasonable play. And obviously, if one of the two does end up sitting, the other becomes an excellent play that'll be overlooked. I don't think many people are going to have much roster spots for this game to get to if the news does break that way. So an interesting one late, certainly one you can kind of late swap to if you need to, but don't see anything as a must play in this game at least.
We got a little bit of news here. PJ Washington and Terry Rozier are in. Mark Williams and Gordon Hayward are out. in that game in Toronto. So get in the Discord, see what is going on, see how people are evaluating the Charlotte rotation with that news. We were at 108 about a minute ago, AP. I don't know where we're at now. What are your thoughts here? We're close to 125. The people may get there in overtime, but I'll leave it to you as to whether or not we go through with the plays of the day or we just get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, we could, it's a Monday, potentially good NFL game on tonight. I mean, we can be friendly. We can give the plays of the day.
Could be. I'm sure a lot of interest. Jalen Hurts ruled in. Geno Smith likely going to miss that game. So you get a Jalen Hurts, Drew Lock matchup there. A game in Seattle, I believe. So a little bit of an advantage for the Seahawks there. But all right, we'll go with the plays of the day. And DC, we'll let you go first. You're back home from Vegas, a weekend of winning, a weekend of lots of other things, I'm sure. What is the mom's basement play of the day on this fine December Monday afternoon?
This is going to be a chalky play, but I'm rolling with it. He'll be on, I presume, all of my teams. Isaiah Jackson, I just don't see a way he doesn't play big minutes here for Indiana. He's been a really good producer on a per-minute basis, and now missing Miles Turner, missing Jalen Smith. I think you're looking at probably 30-plus minutes from Jackson at 5K. We've talked on this show about how tight the pricing is. There's just not very many players in that price range who's got a realistic chance to give you 40-plus fantasy points. So he'll be very popular, but I think it's chalk that you want to eat tonight, Isaiah Jackson.
Isaiah Jackson, chalk that you want to eat. I'll go next. AP mentioned Cam Johnson. I like the play. I actually like the Nets here a little bit. I'm not going to go with Cam just in case that's AP's play, but I've been planning diligently for the big game from Mikal Bridges. And at 7,700 on DraftKings, I think that game comes tonight. Mikal Bridges on a night where pricing is tight. I like a couple of these Nets in my lineup. AP, time for the gentleman's play of the day. Who you got?
It is not Cam Johnson. I thought about that, but it is a guy in the game that DC referenced on the other side. Now, Mr. Paul George must be pretty vengeful. Check out his stats when playing against his former team, the Pacers. The last 4 times, 55.5 DK points, 63 DK points, 60 DK points, and I believe a 70-piece, putting up 45 raw, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals last time he played in Indiana against the Pacers. Paul George, my play of the day.
Isaiah Jackson, Mikal Bridges, and an angry, vengeful Paul George. Thank you all. Good luck in your contest. Get into the Discord to see what changes between now and lock.